There were dramatic events on the chessboard in Sochi today. At the beginning of the sixth game, the match was still all square. Carlsen had the white pieces. In fact, he has the white pieces in the next two games, so he really had to try and make something of it. And the game went into an open Sicilian. Well, Carlsen choosing that's already an indication that he really wanted an open fight. Now, they reached an endgame quite quickly, but Carlsen definitely had the advantage. We joined the game after 21 moves, and you can see that Carlsen has the two bishops and, a slight space advantage. The rooks are very active, and there's pressure on this weak pawn here. Now, white would very much like to take that pawn on h6, but Anand is holding his position together with tactical tricks. He has knight takes e5. Now, obviously, if that's taken by the rook, then rook takes bishop. And if rook takes rook here, then here's the point. Black is able to flick in knight takes bishop, check, and after king d2, then rook takes rook, and, well, black is more than fine in that position. So basically, yeah, black is still holding. It's still tough to crack black's position. Carlsen played, I think, a good move, just dropping the bishop out of range of black's knight. And Anand defended very coolly, king b7. He didn't panic here. And it's surprisingly difficult to break black. Rook g4. I think Carlsen was just trying to improve his position little by little. It's not clear that rook g4 is the best way to do it, but anyway. Nice plan from Anand. He didn't panic. He just wanted to advance this pawn as far as possible. As we'll see, it creates good counterplay. Bishop d1 from Carlsen. Defending the rook. Maybe trying to cover the f3 square in case he wants to play g3. Rook d8. Yeah, interesting. Trying to get some counterplay potentially on the d file. White could play bishop e2 here, but, well, Carlsen just went back again, hitting the knight, and Anand came back with his rook. So they repeated the position. So Carlsen, was shuffling about here, not quite sure what to do, but then he hit upon a plan, which was to move his king towards the king side to protect these pawns. And I think that's a reasonable idea, and that'll make it easier to try and take the pawn on h6. King d1 is the way to go about it, but instead he played king d2, which is an incredible oversight. And as soon as Carlsen played it, he realised what he's done. Black can play knight takes pawn. And once again, there's a Zwischenschach, an in-between move, an in-between check. Now, if rook takes rook, knight takes pawn check, king has to move away, rook takes rook, and you can see in this position that black is 2 pawns ahead. Now, it's not completely lost, but I would say that black has very good winning chances there. Extraordinary. But Anand was in the middle of this plan and immediately moved pawn to a4. Incredible. And immediately he played the move. He realised that he'd overlooked the tactic. So Carlsen stumbled on with king e2. So now knight takes is no longer possible because there's no check against the king. So Anand continued with his plan, pawn to a3. Now this is actually very interesting, forgetting the oversight. If the position breaks open, then it can be very nice to have the pawn on a3, because if a2 drops, then of course the pawn is very close to the queening square. So it's tricky. f3 from Carlsen, good idea to cut this bishop out of play, and maybe the king can come to f2 to protect g2. Rook d8. Here's a very interesting moment. Carlsen could have exchanged off bishop for knight, reached this position, and, well, clearly he was worried about counterplay, maybe this pawn and this pawn drop. But, it's all a question of calculation. He could have gone for it. It's not clear to me whether black can hold this position, but Carlsen decided to try and get as much from the position as possible before he cashed in. And he just came back with his king. But he's kind of hesitating. Rook d7. Bishop c1. And here, I mean, definitely it's not possible to take on g6 because rook d8, and suddenly you can see this is serious counterplay once black's rook slams in there and goes for the a2 pawn. So bishop c1, hitting the pawn, Anand protected the pawn. And now king e2, once again, wasn't really possible to take any of those pawns. And now things are really hotting up. Bishop a4. You see Vichy wants to try and gain control over the d1 square to try and enter there. And certainly Carlsen would be very reluctant to exchange bishops because then there's pressure against here. And I mean, black can even be better in these kind of positions. So bishop e4 check. And now it's very interesting if Anand had simply moved away with the king, given up the exchange, but suddenly you can see that white's rooks are slightly offside. And if black can penetrate with the rook down here and maybe get to a2, well, black certainly has counterplay. I mean, I think white is better there, but it's not simple. Instead, Anand went back with the bishop. And now Carlsen took. So finally he breaks through. And in this case, it's strong. Because to get to the d1 square, it takes time. So Vichy went back with bishop a4. Carlsen took on e6, and this is serious now. So rook d1, Anand trying to gain counterplay. Now this bishop is not the best piece in the world, and Anand chasing it. King e3, just preempting rook takes a2. And here Anand collapsed completely. He could have played rook takes a2, going after that bishop, and also threatening the pawn on g2. But this is certainly better for Carlsen, probably winning, because now you give up your bishop, and then you take on h6, and then you take black's last pawn, and white has, well, probably 4 pawns, possibly even 5 pawns for the bishop. The king is also very, very poorly placed at the side of the board. That must be winning for white. But that's certainly Anand's best. He could keep fighting in that position. But instead, Anand played bishop c2. And after this check on e7, he resigned. Now, if the king goes backwards, then it's going to be chopped to pieces by rook takes h6, and there's going to be a threat to mate. So if the king comes forward, then rook h6, and you can see this is even worse than the last variation we considered, because if rook a2, then bishop c5, and black doesn't even win the bishop because there's a pin here. And that's, well, at least 4 extra pawns for white. So after rook e7 check, Anand resigned. After the game, Carlsen certainly didn't look like he was celebrating. He just said, "I'm mightily relieved," or massively relieved, he said. I mean, in fact, this is a very uneven game. Carlsen definitely had the advantage, but hesitated. I mean, he also said after the game he thought that this oversight affected the quality of the game. It put him off his stride. Anand actually got decent counterplay with the a-pawn, but then just collapsed at the close completely. Anyway, it's all water under the bridge, and after 6 games, that's half time in the World Championship match, Carlsen leads by 1 win. So 6 games to go. They have a rest day tomorrow, and on Monday they play the 7th game with Carlsen having the white pieces again. Do join me for another report after that game.